FCC banning robocalls that use artificial intelligence. Kansas lawmakers are presenting a bill that would also crack down on that technology. 12 News reporter Julia Doctrey has more on what possible consequences of using AI for this purpose would have. Julia?
Rachel, Kansas lawmakers are working to cut down on the number of these calls by making it punishable with a misdemeanor charge. Nationwide, the FCC is already finding those responsible for these deceptive practices and giving the victims the right to take legal action. Here in Kansas, lawmakers are proposing a bill that would also enforce those punishments. I spoke with political science professor Dr. Russell Arbin Fox. He believes this would help get rid of any false advertising for and against political candidates.
The fact that a lot of the people looking at AI are thinking in terms of fraud. They're thinking in terms of creating false messages from a particular candidate, targeting a specific person.
The FCC ban is already in place, but for Kansas, the bill would need the committee approval before it can advance to the House.